Hello everyone. Often when working together in groups in school projects, you interact with several different people that comes from different cultures than your own. Today we will show you how 5 different cultures think about language. We choose language because language is the bridge of communication for everyone.
When I think of language, I immediately think of the English language, as that is the prominent language where I am from in my hometown and also Indiana as a whole. Even though our main spoken language is English, I also can think about the different dialects and even accents that go on just here in Indiana. So, for example, we are surrounded by Kentucky, Illinois, Ohio, and Michigan. And when you travel from one part of the state to another, you can typically sometimes hear that there's like an accent change. I am from Connersville, Indiana, and I am about an hour away from Louisville, Kentucky. And sometimes I get told I have a southern accent. A real life example of this was when I moved to Purdue 2 years ago. And I started to make friends and had my roommate. They all kept asking where I was from, and they kept assuming that I was from down south because of my accent. Personally, I don't hear one. I've never heard one. But everyone who was at Purdue heard some type of accent that I can't hear. Even with this back home, I hear more southern accents in some people than others, and it's just very interesting that when you just travel an hour or two within the same state, that you can be welcomed by different dialects and welcomed by different accents. So when I think of language, I definitely think of language as a whole, but also within itself, it's diverse when it comes to different dialects and different accents, because I have been surrounded by those different types of dialects and accents.
So, how is language unique to your culture? So automatically when I think about language, I think about when people say I have the accent, even though I don't think that I have an accent. A lot of people say the Chicagoans have like this nasally type thing going on. I don't hear it. Maybe it's because I don't want to hear it. And I also think about slang terms that we have on the south side of Chicago, specific to the south side. I'll go over 3 terms with you right now. The first term I'm going to tell you about is merch. And the average person may think that merch means, or that it stands for merchandise. That is not true. Merch is used to tell someone to offer proof of something. Like if someone says, "Oh, I won the lottery," you tell them merch. Like you have to prove it. So the next term that I want to go over is called the 9. The 9 stands for 79th, which is a strip of streets, and its origin is from the bus line. It's a bus line that takes you straight down 79th, and you stop at different streets. Like it could be Ashland, it could be Paulina, it could be Hermitage, and it just so happens that I am from 79th. So if you were ever to come across the term, "Are you from the 9" or "Are you on the 9?" that means 79th. And the last term that I want to go over is actually 2 of them, which they can be grouped together, is B and G. And you could probably guess what this means, maybe not, but it means essentially dude or bro. So it's just like a way you address your friends. Like G, guess what happened, would be essentially the equivalent to saying bro, guess what happened, or dude, guess what happened. So it's just something that you call someone who you're familiar with, or just someone at all, even just walking down the street, it doesn't matter.
I love the Spanish language. I think that it's beautiful because it is so diverse. There are variances in all Latin countries with the different Spanish dialects that are within the country and the different Spanish dialects that are within really all of Latin America and other Latin countries. So to give some examples on the variances, here is sort of how Dominicans speak Spanish.
Bonita segunda, tanto macho. ¿Qué tú comes? ¿Tu comida favorita? ¿Tu abuelito o donde tú vas?
Tú sabes, depende. Tú sabes, cuando yo voy a la casa de mi abuela.
All right, and here is an example of sort of a Puerto Rican conversation.
Diablo, nos acostumbramos a lo sencillo y ahora estamos en un meneo de disco.
No tanto que
Y
nos
un
acostumbramos a
disco-
lo sencillo, exacto, y un disco es
disco debe
diferente.
tener como...
Que
Yo siento
nosotros-
que quizás...
And here, for example, is some Mexican Spanish.
Y
¿Y tu papá en dónde estaba en esto?
trabajando también, él
¿También aportaba?
No, mi mamá me sacó adelante. Mi mamá me sacó adelante y...
So, as you hopefully heard, it was all Spanish, but it was spoken all differently within the different countries or cultures. So, for example, Mexican Spanish has more pronunciation, so we pronounce words a bit more than, say, Dominicans or Puerto Ricans. So, in Mexico, you would say buenos dias, whereas in Puerto Rico, you may cut off the S and just say buenos dias. Also, the pronunciation of the R. So, in Mexico, you could say something like olor de tu perfume, whereas in Puerto Rico or another Spanish-speaking area, you may say olor de tu perfume. So different pronunciation of the R. Mexican Spanish is also on the slower end, especially compared to Dominicans. Dominicans speak super fast and Mexicans speak a lot slower. And because Mexico was one of the first to get colonized by the Spaniards, we also say mande when saying like what do you mean? Like mande is something you say if you want to be more respectful, whereas in other Latin countries it's just que, where it's que in Spanish as well, but mande is more of a respectful, is seen more as a respectful way to speak. And even within Mexico, there are so many dialects, and there's still plenty of indigenous languages in Mexico. So Spanish is very diverse, and there's so many variances in it, and that is why I think it's such a beautiful language.
The language I speak the most definitely is Chinese. I would say Mandarin instead of Chinese because Chinese means simplified Chinese and traditional Chinese. In Taiwan, we use traditional Chinese the most. I think what is the difference between English and Chinese is the most obvious difference is the written language. Chinese is a language made up of a character or symbols. Each character or word has an individual meaning, but English, on the other hand, is made up of 26 alphabet letters. Each letter has no meaning of its own. A word is a combination of letters. Also, I think the grammar is the most different also. The second area of difference is grammar. The Chinese language shares meaning through word orders and phrases, share context, but in Chinese, a typical sentence is subject, verb, and object. Time is expressed in individual words such as tomorrow, yesterday, and in the past. Meanwhile, time expression in English is through different verb tenses and verb forms. Last one, I think, is pronunciations. The third area of difference is pronunciations because, in fact, pronunciations may be the most difficult for Chinese students studying in English, just as Chinese and English are greatly different in written form. Mandarin Chinese and English vary greatly in pronunciations. So I think the most different things between English and Chinese is pronunciation, grammar, and the characters. Thank you.
The China's official language is Mandarin, which used to be the folk language in Beijing. the capital of China right now. And even we speak the same language, it is very different from one city to another. In general, North accent sounds more rough and Southern accent is more dedicated. Also, many South people cannot distinguish the pronunciation of N and L. It sounds like N and L. It's very complicated, right? However, it's very interesting when people have different accents meet each other. Take myself as an example. Myself was given birth in north part of China. However, my parents are both from south part of China. So due to this family reason, my accent is kind of mixed. So for you guys, perhaps it's like half American, half England. And I can change my accent if I want. So when I first meet someone new, I start to speak in North accent and they think I'm local. And then I change my accent to South one. And they start get confused and will always say, wait, where from again? And I found this very interesting every time. So now I know that the accent is a very easy way to get to know someone new and make some new friends perhaps when you're out there. Thanks for listening.